The morning sun rose over Haven's Rest, just like it had for the past 12 years. Captain Deho stood on the observation deck of the colony's central hub, watching farmers head out to the fields. Children ran toward the school complex, their laughter carrying on the wind. Everything felt peaceful. Everything felt safe. Deho smiled as he checked the daily reports. The wheat harvest exceeded expectations by 15%. The medical center reported 0 serious illnesses. 3 new families had just arrived from Earth last week. Life was good here on humanity's frontier. Captain, we have unknown vessels entering the system. Mina's voice came through his communicator. She was the chief communications officer, and she never sounded worried. Today, her voice carried an edge he had never heard before. Deho rushed to the command center. The screens showed 5 massive warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They were not human designs. The ships were angular, covered in dark metal plates, with weapons ports visible along their hulls. "Have they responded to our hails?" Deho asked. Mina shook her head. "Nothing yet. Wait, incoming transmission now." The main screen flickered. A creature appeared that looked nothing like any species Deho had met at the Galactic Council. Dead. Had 4 eyes, scales covering its face, and teeth that seemed designed for tearing flesh. The translator kicked in. "Human colony. This is Commander Kilroth of the Vraken Empire. You have 60 seconds to surrender unconditionally. Failure to comply will result in immediate military action." Deho felt his stomach drop. "Commander Kilrath, we are a peaceful agricultural colony. We have no military forces here. There must be some misunderstanding. Please, let us contact the Galactic Council to mediate." Kilrath's laugh sounded like grinding metal. "You have 40 seconds. "We have 47,000 people here," Deho said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Men, women, children. We are protected by galactic law. This colony was registered and approved by the Council itself. 20 seconds. Mina grabbed Deho's arm. "Sir, I am opening emergency channels to Earth. We need to send everything." Deho nodded. He looked around the command center at his crew. These were good people. Teachers who came to build a new school. Engineers who wanted to construct something meaningful. Families who dreamed of a fresh start among the stars. None of them deserved this. "All channels open," Mina reported. "Earth is receiving our transmission. Captain, what should I tell them?" "Tell them what happened here," Deho said quietly. "Tell them we tried to negotiate. Tell them we followed every rule." He paused. "Tell them to remember us." The sky outside turned red. Energy weapons began firing from orbit. The first strike hit the agricultural district, vaporizing the fields Deho had watched that morning. The second hit the residential area. The third hit the school. Mina worked. Frantically at her console, tears streaming down her face. "Still transmitting? Earth is receiving everything." "Captain, they are asking what they can do." "Tell them," Deho said as the building shook around them. "Tell them to make sure this never happens again. Tell them we loved living out here among the stars. Tell them we died as humans, trying to talk and reason until the very end." Another explosion rocked the building. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, but Deho knew they only had minutes now. He could see the other colonies on the planet through the windows. Every single one was burning. Mina's console sparked. She ignored it, keeping her hands on the controls. "Message sent, sir. Earth confirms receipt, they are saying. They're saying help is coming." Deho wanted to laugh, but it came out as a sob. Help would take weeks to arrive, even at the fastest speed humanity could manage. They did not have weeks. They did not have ours. "Thank them," he said. "Tell them we understand." Transmission kept broadcasting. Mina made sure every second was recorded and sent back to Earth. The sounds of destruction, the images of burning homes, the final moments of 47,000 human beings who had only wanted to build a life in peace halfway across the galaxy. Ambassador Yuna sat in the Galactic Council chambers. She was attending a routine session about trade routes when her personal communicator began vibrating urgently. She glanced at it and felt her blood turn to ice. The message was simple: Haven's Rest under attack. Total genocide in progress. Broadcasting until the end. Yuna stood up abruptly. The council members looked at her in surprise. She was known for being calm and diplomatic, always following protocol. Ambassador Yuna, is something wrong? It's Counselor Thalara, a long-necked creature known for her mediation skills. I need to leave immediately, Yuna said. Her voice sounded strange even to her own ears. There is an emergency. She walked out of the chamber without waiting for permission. In the hallway, she accessed the full transmission from Haven's Rest. She watched Captain Deho's final message. She heard Mina's voice breaking as she described what was happening. She saw the bombardment through the colony's external cameras until each one went dark. The transmission ended with static. 47,000 people were gone, erased from existence in less than 20 minutes. Yuna immediately contacted Earth. Admiral Hyunwoo appeared on her screen within seconds. His face looked carved from stone. You have seen it, he said. It was not a question. Yes, Yuna replied. The entire colony. They killed everyone, Admiral. Not a single survivor. They are claiming it was to test our resolve. Hyunwoo was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, again, his voice was quiet but filled with something that made Yuna shiver. The Galactic Council will expect us to file protests. They will expect investigations and diplomatic negotiations that take years. Yes, Yuna agreed. That is the civilized way. How long until you can return to the council chamber? Yunwoo asked. 10 minutes, good. Tell them we appreciate their concern. Tell them Earth will handle this matter directly. An ambassador. Hyunwoo leaned closer to the screen. Tell them we are done being civilized. Yuna returned to the council chamber. The various species looked at her with expressions ranging from concern to curiosity. Counselor Thalara approached her immediately. Ambassador Yuna, we heard about the tragedy at your colony. Please know that the council stands ready to assist in any way. We can open formal investigations into this unprovoked attack. Yuna looked at the faces around her. Some seemed genuinely sympathetic. Others looked uncomfortable, as if discussing something unpleasant. None of them looked truly angry. None of them looked ready to actually do anything. Thank you, Counselor, Yuna said softly. Your concern is noted. However, Earth will not be requiring the Council's assistance in this matter. Thalara blinked in confusion. I do not understand. Surely you will want our help bringing the Vraken Empire to justice through proper channels. Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The proper channels did not save 47,000 human lives. We tried your civilized way, Counselor. We registered our colony legally. We followed every regulation. We attempted to negotiate even as they fired upon us. She paused. Earth has decided to try a different approach. Within hours, every species in the galaxy received the same transmission. It came from Earth's military command, broadcast on every possible frequency. Admiral Hyunwoo's face appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. His message was brief. To all civilized species of the galaxy, humanity has attempted to join your community as partners in peace. Today, the Vraken Empire demonstrated that peace is a language not all species understand. Very well. From this moment forward, humanity suspends all diplomatic protocols regarding this matter. We will not file complaints. We will not wait for investigations. We will not follow proper channels. Hyunwoo paused, and his next words were spoken with absolute certainty. We stopped being civilized. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from 300 species packed, the seats all waiting to see how humanity would respond to the tragedy at Haven's Rest. Most expected tears and passionate speeches demanding justice. They expected humanity to follow the proper procedures that had governed galactic relations for thousands of years. Ambassador Yuna walked to the center platform carrying a small data device. She looked tired, and several council members noticed her eyes were red from crying. Good, they thought. She would appeal to their emotions, and they would form committees to investigate the matter. Counselor Thalara spoke first, her voice gentle. Ambassador Yuna, the entire council shares in your grief. We have already begun preliminary discussions about forming an investigative committee to examine the Vraken actions. Such committees typically take 6 to 8 months to complete their work, but we can prioritize this matter. Thank you, Counselor, Yuna said. Her voice was steady now. However, Earth will not be participating in any investigations. Confused murmurs rippled through the chamber. Lara tilted her head. I am sorry, I do not understand. How else do? You propose we bring the Vraken Empire to account for their actions. We do not propose anything, Yuna replied. She activated the data device, and holographic displays appeared above the platform. We are informing the Council of what Earth will be doing. Consider this a courtesy notification, not a request for permission. The display showed military fleet formations, weapons specifications, and deployment schedules. Counselor Thelara's eyes widened. Ambassador, these appear to be battle plans. Correct, Yuna confirmed. In 72 hours, Earth's military forces will begin operations against all Vraken military assets throughout their territory. We estimate the campaign will last approximately 90 days. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Borak, the Vraken ambassador, stood up from his seat, his scales flushed with anger. This is outrageous. You cannot simply declare war without council approval. We are a major power in this region of space. Yuna turned to face him. Her expression was colder than ice. You destroyed an unarmed colony of 47,000 civilians without council approval. We are merely responding in kind. Borak laughed, though it sounded forced. You are barely spacefaring primitives. We have been traveling the stars for 3,000 years. You think your pathetic fleet can challenge the Vraken Empire? You will send your ships, and we will destroy them just as easily as we destroyed your little farming colony. Admiral Hunwool appeared on a large screen behind Yuna. He had been listening to the entire exchange. Ambassador Borak, would you like to see what humanity has been working on while we were busy being civilized? Before Borak could respond, new images filled the displays. Weapons systems appeared that made several council members gasp. Energy weapons that could cut through standard military shielding like paper. Kinetic projectiles that traveled at relativistic speeds. Warheads that could crack a planet's crust. Ships designed not for exploration, but for one purpose only. Winning battles, Dr. Jiho. A human scientist stepped up beside Yuna. He wore a simple suit and glasses, looking more like a teacher than a military strategist. Years, while humanity has been joining the galactic community, we have also been preparing. We studied every conflict in galactic history. We analyzed every military technology. We built weapons based on human warfare principles, not the limited combat the galaxy has seen. This is madness, Thelara said, her voice shaking. You cannot simply unleash this level of violence. There are rules. There are protocols for how civilized species resolve conflicts. General Sora appeared on another screen. She commanded Earth's ground forces, and her uniform showed decades of service medals. Counselor, we followed your rules. We registered our colony through proper channels. We paid all required fees. We submitted to all inspections. We did everything. You asked of us to be part of your civilized galaxy. Her voice hardened. And then we watched 47,000 people die, because your rules have no teeth against predators who do not care about them.
Admiral Heinwu
spoke again. Every human on Earth has seen the transmission from Haven's Rest. They watched Captain Deho trying to negotiate while his colony burned. They heard Mina's voice as she described children's schools being vaporized. They saw what happens when we trust in civilized processes to protect us. Back on Earth, the scene was like nothing in human history. Every spaceport was packed with civilian vessels being converted to military use. Factories that made consumer goods were retooled to produce weapons. Universities became tactical planning centers. The entire industrial might of humanity, built over centuries of development, turned toward a single goal. Recruitment centers could not handle the crowds. Veterans came back to service. Young people volunteered in numbers that shocked the military planners. Engineers, doctors, pilots, and soldiers all stepped forward, united by grief and determination. A reporter stood outside the main recruitment center in Seoul, speaking to her camera. I have covered many stories in my career, but I have never seen anything like this. Look behind me. The line stretches for miles. These people are not being drafted. They are volunteering. When I asked them why, they all said the same thing. Because Haven's Rest deserves justice. General Sora outlined the strategy to the Galactic Council. We are not interested in occupying Vrakan territory. We're not interested in taking their resources. We have one objective: the complete elimination of their ability to threaten anyone ever again. Every military base, every warship, every weapons facility will be destroyed. You are talking about the systematic dismantling of an entire empire, Thalara protested. That could take years. The casualties will be enormous. 90 days, Admiral Hyunwoo corrected. We have run the projections, and yes, there will be casualties, ours and theirs. But it ends in 90 days, and it ends completely. Borak had stopped laughing. He looked at the displayed battle plans with growing concern. You are bluffing. You must be bluffing. No species could mobilize this quickly. No military could coordinate operations on this scale. Dr. Jiho smiled sadly. Ambassador Borak do. You know what humanity did before we reached the stars? We fought wars. Terrible, devastating wars against ourselves. We learned how to organize millions of people toward a common goal. We learned how to turn entire economies into war machines. We learned how to win through superior strategy, technology, and sheer determination. He paused. We hoped we would never need those skills again. We were wrong, Ambassador. Yuna pulled up casualty projections. Council should also know that we expect to take significant losses. 15 to 20% of our military forces will likely not return home. We have accepted this. The families of our soldiers have accepted this. Do you know why? She pulled up images from Haven's Rest. The burned homes, the destroyed schools, the empty fields where people once laughed and worked and lived. Because the cost of doing nothing is higher? Thalara tried one more time. Please, Ambassador. Let us try diplomacy first. Give the Council time to negotiate with the Vrakan. Perhaps we can reach a settlement. Reparations, territory, trade concessions. There are always alternatives to war. Admiral Hyunwoo leaned forward on his screen. Counselor Thalara, I have a question for you. If the Vrakan attacked your homeworld tomorrow and killed 47,000 of your people, would you wait 6 months for a committee to investigate? Would you accept trade concessions as payment for the lives of your children? Thalara opened her mouth, then closed it again. She had no answer. Yuna deactivated her data device. Earth's fleet will depart in 72 hours. We are informing the Council as a courtesy. Any species that wishes to remain neutral should avoid Vrakan space during this time. Any species that chooses to assist the Vrakan will be considered hostile. Any species that interferes with our operations will face consequences. You cannot do this, Borak shouted. The Council will sanction you. You will be expelled from the galactic community. Yuna looked at him with an expression that made him step back. Ambassador Borak, we tried being part of your community. We followed your rules. And when we needed your protection, you offered us investigations and committees. So, here's Earth's position. We will maintain trade relations with species who wish to trade with us. We will maintain diplomatic relations with species who wish diplomacy. But we will never again rely on this Council to protect human lives. She walked off the platform and out of the chamber. Behind her, the Council erupted in arguments and debates. Some species condemned humanity's actions. Others stayed silent, secretly relieved that someone was finally standing up to the Vrakan aggression they had tolerated for too long. Back on Earth, the first strike force was already gathering in orbit. 300 ships, all carrying the new weapons Dr. Jiho had designed. Admiral Heinwa stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking at the fleet assembled around him. His second-in-command approached. Sir, the Vrakan are broadcasting that we are making a mistake. They say, we will regret this action. Hyunwoo thought of Captain Daeho's final transmission. He thought of those 47,000 voices that would never speak again. He thought of the children who died in their schools, the farmers who died. In their fields, the teachers and engineers and families who just wanted to build something beautiful among the stars. No, he said quietly. The only regret I have is that we cannot bring them back. But we can make absolutely certain this never happens again. Prepare the fleet for departure. Across the Vrakan Empire, military commanders received reports about the human response. Most dismissed it as empty threats. Humans were weak, they said. humans would not actually fight. Humans would back down when they realized the cost. They were about to learn how wrong they were, Commander. Guan stood on the bridge of the human flagship Remembrance, watching the stars shift as the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Before them lay the outer edge of Ration-controlled space. 300 human ships hung in formation, silent and ready. All vessels report ready status, the communications officer reported. We are awaiting your orders, Commander. Jiwan was 38 years old and had spent her entire adult life in Earth's defense forces. She had trained for exploration missions, hoping to see new worlds and meet new species. Instead, she was leading humanity's first major space battle. It's the weight of 47,000 dead souls pressed on her shoulders. Send the message, she ordered. All frequencies. Let's make sure they hear us. Clearly, the transmission went out across Rakan space in their own language. This is Commander Juwan of the Earth Defense Force. We are here for one reason. You will learn today that humanity does not forgive genocide. You will learn that we protect our own. We'll learn what happens when you mistake our patience for weakness. 10 minutes later, the Vraken response fleet arrived. Commander Kilrath commanded the force personally. The same Vraken who had destroyed Haven's Rest. His fleet numbered 500 ships, and he smiled when he saw the human vessels, only 300 ships. He broadcast to Giwan, expected more from a species declaring war. This will be easier than destroying your pathetic colony. Gigwan's jaw tightened. She had watched the transmission from Haven's Rest a dozen times, memorizing every moment, burning Kilrath's face into her memory. You have one chance to surrender, Commander Kilrath. Power down your weapons and prepare to be taken into custody. Kilrath's laugh echoed across the communication channel. Surrender? To humans? You are even more foolish than I thought. Attack! The Vraken fleet surged forward in a standard formation, the kind they had used successfully for centuries. Their energy weapons had superior range to most galactic species, and they relied on overwhelming firepower to win battles quickly. What they did not know was that humans had been studying their tactics for years. All ships, Guan commanded calmly. Execute pattern Delta 7. Out the human fleet scattered in multiple directions, moving in ways that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated. Fighter squadrons launched from the carriers, led by Captain Soman, humanity's best pilot. She had trained in atmospheric combat on Earth, learning maneuvers in gravity wells that other species never attempted. Gold Squadron, follow my lead, Salman transmitted. Her fighter dove toward the Vraken fleet at an angle that made Kilrath's tactical officer blink in confusion. Sir, they are approaching too fast, the officer reported. They will not be able to slow down or turn. They will crash into us. Kilrath watched the human fighters approach. At the last possible second, they did turn, but not in any direction he expected. They used the gravity of a nearby moon to whip around at speeds that should have torn their ships apart. The human fighters came up underneath the Vraken formation, where shields were weakest, and fired. The Vraken lost 15 ships in the first 30 seconds. How are they surviving those forces? Kilrath demanded. Their pilot should be unconscious. What Kilrath did not understand was that humans had evolved on a world with higher gravity than most spacefaring species. Their bodies could handle forces that would kill other creatures. Add in pressure suits and dampening systems designed specifically for extreme maneuvers, and human pilots could perform impossible tricks. Summon Squadron punched through the Vraken formation, destroying ships with precise weapons fire. Other squadrons followed, turning the Vraken advantage of numbers into a disadvantage as their own ships blocked each other's firing solutions. Meanwhile, Commander Juan brought the human capital ships into range. The Vraken expected a traditional exchange of energy weapons fire. Instead, the human ships fired kinetic projectiles accelerated to a fraction of light speed. The projectiles hit Vraken shields with devastating force. Standard shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, not solid matter traveling at relativistic speeds. The first Vraken battleship simply broke apart, its shield generators overloaded instantly. Now all ships returned fire. Kilroth ordered desperately. Concentrate on their flagship. The Vrakan fleet unleashed everything they had at the Remembrance. Energy beams lanced across space, hammering into the human ship's shields and hull. Damage reports flooded Jiwan's command console. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Shield generators failing. Casualties in engineering sections. But the Remembrance did not retreat. It did not even slow down. Kilrith watched in growing horror as the human flagship kept coming, kept firing, even as his weapons tore into it. Why are they not pulling back? They must be taking critical damage. What Kilrith did not know was that human ships were built very differently from Vrakan vessels. The Vrakan designed ships with large crew quarters, recreational facilities, and comfortable living spaces. Human warships were built with redundant systems, armored compartments, and damage control as the primary design philosophy. The human crew could seal off entire sections and keep fighting with half the ship. Exposed to space, the Remembrance fired again. Another Vrakan battleship exploded. Then another. "Sir, we have lost 60 ships," Kilrath's tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "They have lost 12. This is not possible." Yuan watched her tactical display. The human fleet was taking damage, yes. Good people were dying on those ships. But they were winning. All vessels, begin boarding operations. "I want Kilrith alive." Kilrith felt his blood turn cold. Boarding operations? They cannot be serious. No species attempts boarding operations in fleet combat. But the humans were serious. Assault shuttles launched from the carriers, protected by fighter cover. They flew through the chaos of the battle, dodging debris and weapons fire. Captain Taijin commanded the first boarding team targeting Kilrath's flagship. Taijin was a Marine, a veteran of peacekeeping operations who had never wanted to see real combat. Now he was leading a squad through hostile fire toward an enemy ship, and he was angry. Not the hot anger that makes people careless, but the cold anger that makes them absolutely focused. 30 seconds to contact, his pilot called out. "They are targeting us." "Get us there," Taijin ordered. "We did not come this far to turn back now." Shuttle slammed into the Vrakan flagship's hull, cutting torches burning through the outer armor. Taijin's squad poured into the breach, weapons ready. The Vrakan crew fought back, but they had never faced soldiers like this. Humans had been fighting each other in close-quarters combat for thousands of years. They knew every angle of attack, every defensive position, every psychological trick to break an enemy's will. The Vrakan were bigger and stronger, but Taijin's squad moved like a single organism, covering each other, advancing methodically through the ship. "Contact front." One Marine called out. Energy bolts flew down the corridor. The humans took cover behind bulkheads, returning fire with weapons designed to penetrate armor. 3 Vrakan fell. Then 5 more. Taijin led his squad deeper into the ship. They took casualties. Private Minho died, saving his squad mate from a grenade. Sergeant Yunji lost her arm to energy fire but kept fighting with her sidearm. The Marines pressed forward because they all knew what these Vrakan had done to Haven's Rest. On the bridge, Kilrith watched his ship's internal monitors as human soldiers fought their way through his crew. How are they this effective? They are not even a proper military species. His tactical officer had no answers. The truth was simple. Humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. They had fought in trenches, jungles, cities, and mountains. They had learned hard lessons written in blood across their entire history. Now they brought all that experience to space. Taijin's squad reached the bridge entrance. They placed shaped charges on the door and stepped back. The explosion blew the door inward. The Marines rushed through, weapons raised. Kilrath stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by dead crew members who had tried to fight. He raised his weapon toward Taijin. "Do not," Taijin said quietly. "You are more useful alive." "Why would I surrender to you?" Kilrath demanded. "You will just execute me anyway." Taijin lowered his weapon slightly. "No. We need you to watch. We need you to see what comes next. We need you to tell your entire empire what happens when you commit genocide against humanity." Kilrath looked into Taijin's eyes and saw something that made him drop his weapon. Not hatred, not rage. Something colder and more frightening. Absolute determination. The space battle ended 3 hours after it began. The Vraken fleet was destroyed completely. Every single ship was either debris or captured. The human fleet had lost 35 vessels and over 4,000 crew members. Commander Guy Wan stood on the bridge of the damaged Remembrance, looking at the casualty reports. 4,000 dead. 4,000 people who would never see Earth again. But they had been protecting 47,000 ghosts who deserved justice. Send full battle footage to Earth Command, she ordered, and broadcast it on all galactic frequencies. Let them see exactly what happened here. Across the galaxy, species watched the Battle of the Outer Rim with shock. They saw human fighters performing impossible maneuvers. They saw human ships taking damage that should have destroyed them and keeping fighting. They saw human marines boarding enemy vessels in the middle of combat. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Counselor Thalara watched the footage with a sick feeling in her stomach. They actually did it. They actually fought a major fleet engagement and won. Ambassador Yuna stood before the council once more. This was the first battle. Our fleet is already moving deeper into Vraken space. As promised, the campaign continues. In Vraken territory, panic spread through the military command. They had lost 500 ships and their finest commander in a single battle. The humans had made victory look almost easy. Commander Kilrath sat in a human holding cell aboard the Remembrance. Taijin visited him personally. "Why did you do it?" Taijin asked. "Why destroy Haven's Rest? What did those people ever do to you?" Kilrath looked at the floor. "I was ordered to test your resolve, to see if humans would actually fight or if you would just file protests with the council like all the other weak species." "Well," Taijin said coldly, "now you have your answer. And now, every Vraken in the galaxy will learn the same lesson. You do not attack humanity and walk away." The human fleet moved forward, leaving the wreckage behind. Voices demanded justice, and Earth's military was determined to deliver it. General Sora watched the holographic display showing Vraken territory from her command center on Earth. Red markers indicated targets. Blue markers showed human forces advancing. In just 3 weeks, the red markers were disappearing faster than Vraken High Command could respond. "Report," she ordered. Her intelligence officer, Dong Yun, stepped forward. He was young but brilliant, having spent years studying Vraken culture and military structure. "General, our special operations teams have successfully destroyed 70% of their weapons manufacturing facilities. Their ability to build new ships or resupply their fleet is essentially gone." Sora nodded. This was not a war of conquest. It was a war of dismantlement. Every piece of Vraken military infrastructure was being systematically removed from existence. In the field, Captain Yejane led one of these special operations teams. She was a specialist in infiltration and demolition, and her current mission was typical of how humans were fighting this war. Her team had spent 2 days observing a Vraken military shipyard from orbit, studying guard patterns and security systems. "Insertion in 5 minutes," her pilot announced. Yejin checked her equipment one final time. Her team was small, just 6 people, but they were about to cripple a facility that employed thousands of Vraken workers. "Remember, we are targeting military infrastructure only. Avoid civilian casualties whenever possible." The shuttle dropped them silently on the far side of the shipyard complex. They moved through the shadows like ghosts. The Vraken had good security, but it was designed to stop frontal assaults, not infiltration by soldiers who had trained in every type of terrain on Earth. Yajin's team placed charges at critical structural points. She worked quickly and precisely, her hands steady, despite knowing that Vraken guards were patrolling just meters away. This was not about glory or medals. This was about making sure no more Haven's Rests could ever happen. "Charges set," she whispered into her communicator. "Extraction point, Beta, 2 minutes." They slipped away as quietly as they had arrived. Shuttle picked them up, and they were back in orbit before the charges detonated. The shipyard collapsed. In a series of controlled explosions that destroyed the construction facilities, while leaving the administrative buildings intact. Another one down, Jejin reported, moving to next target. This pattern repeated across Vraken space. Human teams appeared, destroyed military targets, and vanished. The Vraken military tried to respond, but Dong Yun's intelligence network always seemed to be one step ahead. Every troop movement was anticipated. Every supply convoy was intercepted. Every command center was compromised. How are they doing this? A Vraken general demanded at a strategy meeting. How do these humans know our every move? The answer was simple but devastating. Humanity had spent decades building intelligence networks throughout the galaxy. They had learned from their own history how important information was in warfare. While other species relied on honor and direct combat, humans understood that wars were won by knowing your enemy better than they knew themselves. As the Vraken military crumbled, civilian leaders began to panic. Zuroth was a respected Vraken council member who had opposed the attack on Haven's Rest from the beginning. Now he desperately tried to contact Earth to negotiate surrender. Please, he broadcast on emergency channels. I represent Vraken civilians who want this war to end. We were not consulted about the genocide. We do not support these actions. Can we negotiate peace? Ambassador Yuna received the transmission. She considered it carefully, then responded. Zurith, Earth recognizes that not all Vraken supported the attack. However, your government made a choice that cost 47,000 innocent lives. Here are our terms for surrender, immediate and unconditional. Your military will be completely dismantled. Your weapons manufacturing will be destroyed. Your military leadership will face trial. There will be no negotiations. Zurith felt his hope dying. But without a military, we will be vulnerable to any species that wants to attack us. Yes, Yuna replied simply. Just like Haven's Rest was vulnerable when you attacked it. Welcome to what living without protection feels like. The message was clear. The Vraken were learning what they had inflicted on humanity's colonists. Meanwhile, Counselor Thalara arrived at Earth, hoping to plead for mercy on behalf of the Vraken. She was a kind being who genuinely believed in peace and diplomacy. General Sora agreed to meet with her. They met not in a conference room, but at a memorial. Earth had built a monument for every person who died at Haven's Rest. 47,000 names carved into black stone, ranged in spiraling circles. Visitors walked through the paths, reading names, leaving flowers and notes. Thalara walked slowly through the memorial, and each name she read felt like a weight on her heart. Kimbora, age 7. Lee Dongjun, age 43. Park Yuna, age 16. On and on the names went, representing lives that would never be lived, dreams that would never be fulfilled. They were farmers, General Sora said quietly, walking beside her. Teachers, engineers, children. They went to that colony hoping to build something beautiful. They followed every rule your council established. They registered properly. They paid their fees. They trusted that galactic law would protect them. Thalara stopped at one section of the memorial, showing a school class photo. 23 children smiling at the camera.
All dead now?
I am so sorry, she whispered. If I had known what the Vraken planned, I would have stopped it. But you did not know, Sora said, because your council's rules have no enforcement mechanism. Species like the Vraken can do whatever they want because the worst punishment is a strongly worded statement and maybe some trade sanctions years later. So you believe the only answer is violence? Thalara asked. You think destroying the Vraken Empire will prevent future tragedies? Sora pointed to the memorial. I think these 47,000 people deserved better than investigations and committees. I think every species in the galaxy needs to understand that humanity will protect its own. And I think predators need to learn that there are consequences for genocide. At that moment, news arrived that the Vraken had attempted one final, desperate move. A fleet had been dispatched to attack a human colony world called New Shanghai, hoping to force Earth into negotiations. The attack was a disaster for the Vraken. New Shanghai was not like Haven's Rest. After the genocide, Earth had fortified every colony with orbital defense platforms, fighter squadrons, and ground-based weapons. The Vraken fleet arrived expecting easy targets and found a fortress. The battle lasted 6 hours. Not one Vraken ship escaped. Human defenders showed no mercy because they all remembered. Haven's Rest. Every colonist who had watched the transmission from Haven's Rest now fought with the same cold determination as Earth's military. Commander Juan arrived at New Shanghai in the aftermath. She walked through the colony that had survived the attack. Damage was minimal. Casualties were light, because the colony's defenders had performed brilliantly. But she also visited the medical centers where wounded defenders were being treated. She spoke to a young pilot named Minwoo who had lost his legs when his fighter was hit. "Did we win, Commander?" Minwoo asked from his hospital bed. "Yes," Juan said. "You saved this colony. Everyone here survives because of you and pilots like you." Minwoo smiled weakly. "Good. I kept thinking about those people at Haven's Rest. They never had a chance to fight back. At least here we could fight. At least here we could make them pay." Giwan stayed with him until he fell asleep, then went outside and cried. She cried for Minwoo, who would never walk again. She cried for the thousands who had died in the campaign. She cried for the 47,000 ghosts who had started this war. But she did not cry for the Vraken. They had made their choice. Back in Vraken space, their government was collapsing. Military bases were destroyed. Shipyards were rubble. Supply lines were cut. The mighty empire that had terrorized smaller species for centuries was being systematically taken apart by humans, who refused to accept that genocide could go unpunished. Zurith broadcast another message to Earth. "Please, stop the attacks. We surrender, unconditionally. Whatever terms you want, we accept. Just please stop." General Sora reviewed the military situation. Every strategic target was destroyed or captured. The Vraken military no longer existed as a fighting force. The campaign had taken 63 days instead of the projected 90. "Cease offensive operations," she ordered. "Secure captured territories and prepare for occupation phase." Ambassador Yuna received the surrender formally. She stood before what remained of the Vraken High Council, all of them looking defeated and afraid. "Earth accepts your surrender," she said. "Here are the terms, and they are not negotiable. Your military is dissolved permanently. Any remaining warships are forfeit to Earth. All weapons manufacturing facilities will be converted to civilian production. Your government will pay reparations to the families of Haven's Rest victims for the next 50 years. Every Vraken world will display memorials listing the names of those you murdered." Zurith accepted the terms because there was no choice. The alternative was continued destruction, but Yuna was not finished. "There is one more condition. Commander Kilrath and everyone involved in planning the Haven's Rest attack will face trial. Human courts, human laws, human justice." "What will happen to them?" Zeroth asked quietly. Yuna's expression was hard. "They will receive the fair trial that the people of Haven's Rest never got. They will have lawyers and due process. And if found guilty of genocide, they will spend the rest of their lives in prison, thinking every day about what they did." Thalara, who had been observing the surrender, spoke up. "Ambassador Yuna, do you feel that justice has been served?" Yuna was silent for a long moment. "No, Counselor. Justice would be 47,000 people still alive, still building their colony, still reaching for the stars. But this is the closest we can come. This is making sure it never happens again." The war was over. The Vraken Empire was broken, and every species in the galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. They would try peace first. They would follow the rules. They would be patient and diplomatic. But if you pushed them too far, if you hurt their innocent, if you committed genocide against their people, then humans would stop being civilized and show you why their species had survived and thrived on a world that tried very hard to kill them. 3 months after the war began, Ambassador Yuna stood before the Galactic Council once more. The chamber was different now. The representatives looked at her with new eyes. Some showed respect. Others showed fear. All of them paid attention in a way they never had before. "The conflict with the Vraken Empire has concluded," Yuna announced. Her voice was calm, professional, showing none of the grief that still lived inside her. Total Vraken military casualties, approximately 200,000. Human military casualties, 41,000. Civilian casualties on both sides, minimal, due to our targeting protocols. Counselor Thalara shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador, those numbers are staggering. Was such destruction truly necessary? Yuna pulled up images on the main display. Not of battles, but of the Haven's Rest Memorial on Earth. 47,000 civilians were murdered in less than 20 minutes. For 3 months, we fought a war that targeted only military assets. Yes, Counselor, it was necessary. Every single death was necessary to ensure this never happens again. Admiral Hunhua appeared on the communication screen behind her. The Council should understand Earth's position going forward. We joined the galactic community, hoping to be part of something greater than ourselves. We followed your rules. We trusted your systems. And when those systems failed to protect our people, we learned an important lesson. What lesson is that? Asked a representative from the Drellian species, a peaceful race of traders. That civilization without enforcement is just a suggestion, Hyunwoo replied. Your laws mean nothing if species can ignore them without real consequences. So Earth will continue to participate in the galactic community, but on our own terms. Yuna activated a new display showing military deployments. Earth is establishing permanent military installations in 12 strategic locations throughout this region of space. We are also offering mutual defense pacts to any species that wishes protection. The chamber erupted in concerned voices. This was unprecedented. No single species had ever claimed such broad military authority. Yuna waited for the noise to die down. Let me be clear. We are not seeking to conquer anyone. We are not demanding tribute or territory. But we will never again rely solely on council processes to protect human lives. And any species that attacks our allies will face the same response the Vrakan received. Counselor Thalara stood up. Ambassador, you are essentially creating a military alliance outside council authority. This could destabilize the entire galactic order. The Galactic Order was already unstable, Yuna countered. It just took the genocide of Haven's Rest to prove it. Predator species like the Vrakan have been exploiting your rules for centuries. They attack weaker species, knowing the worst they will face is investigations that take years and produce nothing. That ends now. A representative from a small species called the Marani spoke up timidly. Ambassador Yuna, would Earth truly defend species like ours? We have nothing to offer in return. No resources, no technology, no military strength. Yuna looked at the Marani representative with something like kindness in her eyes. That is exactly why we would defend you. The people of Haven's Rest had nothing but hopes and dreams. They deserved protection anyway. So does every peaceful species in this galaxy. Over the next few weeks, 17 smaller species signed mutual defense pacts with Earth. They were species that had lived in fear of larger, more aggressive neighbors. Now they had something they had never possessed before, a protector that had proven it would actually fight. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the work of remembering continued. The Haven's Rest Memorial had become the most visited site on the planet. Millions came to walk among the 47,000 names, leaving flowers and notes and tears. General Sora attended the memorial ceremony marking 3 months since the genocide. She stood before the gathered crowd, which included families of the victims and families of the soldiers who had died in the war. We cannot bring them back, Sora said quietly, her voice carried by speakers to the silent crowd. No amount of victory can do that. No amount of justice can undo what was done. But we can make sure their deaths meant something. We can make sure that every species in the galaxy knows humanity will defend its own. We can build a future where no other colony ever suffers what Haven's Rest suffered. In the audience, a woman named Heejin wept silently. Her daughter had died at Haven's Rest, killed in the school bombing. She had watched the entire war, feeling both grief and grim satisfaction as the Vrakan Empire fell. Now she looked at the memorial stone bearing her daughter's name and wondered if the price had been worth it. A stranger sat down beside her. He wore a military uniform with the insignia of a ship engineer. His name tag read Kyung-ho. I served on the Remembrance, he said quietly. I was in engineering when we took heavy fire at the first battle. I watched 3 of my friends die keeping our ship running so we could keep fighting. He paused. I just wanted you to know that we never forgot why we were fighting. Every time we were scared, every time we wanted to give up, we thought about Haven's Rest, your daughter, and everyone else who died there. They were with us through every battle." Heejin reached out and took his hand. They sat together in silence, two people connected by shared grief and the determination that came from it. Across the galaxy, the trial of Commander Kilroth and his officers began. It was broadcast on every channel, watched by billions of beings. The humans conducted it fairly, with lawyers for the defense and strict adherence to legal procedures. But the evidence was overwhelming. Kilroth sat in the defendant's chair, listening as the charges were read. Genocide, crimes against sentient beings, violations of galactic law. The list went on and on. His lawyer tried to argue that he was following orders, that he should not be held personally responsible. The human judge, an elderly woman named Sunja, listened patiently and then delivered her ruling. "Commander Kilroth, this court recognizes that you were acting under orders from your government. However, there are some orders that no moral being should follow. When you were commanded to destroy an unarmed civilian colony, you had a choice. You could have refused. You could have resigned. You could have warned the colonists. Instead, you followed your orders and murdered 47,000 innocent people." Judge Sunja looked directly at him. "This court finds you guilty on all charges. You will spend the rest of your life in prison, with no possibility of parole. You will live knowing what you did, and you will never escape that knowledge." Kilroth showed no emotion as he was led away. But in his cell that night, alone with his thoughts, he finally understood the magnitude of what he had done. And he understood that humanity's justice was not about revenge. It was about making sure everyone remembered. Back at the Galactic Council, changes were beginning. Inspired by Earth's actions, several other species proposed reforms to the Council's enforcement mechanisms. For the first time in galactic history, there was serious discussion about creating an actual military force that could respond to atrocities. Ambassador Hanuel, a young human diplomat, worked with reformist council members to draft new protocols. She was patient and diplomatic, everything Earth wanted to be in galactic society. But she also carried a small token in her pocket, a stone from Haven's Rest. A reminder of what happened when diplomacy failed? "We are not asking the Council to become warriors," Hanuel explained at a working session. "We are asking you to recognize that peace requires the willingness to defend it. Laws without enforcement are wishes, not rules." Counselor Thalara, who had been deeply affected by visiting the Haven's Rest Memorial, became an unexpected ally in these reforms. Ambassador Hanuel is correct. The Council failed Haven's Rest because we had no mechanism to respond quickly to aggression. We must do better. The reforms would take years to implement, but the conversation had finally begun. Meanwhile, at the ruins of Haven's Rest, a construction fleet arrived. Admiral Hunwoo oversaw the project personally. They were not just rebuilding the colony. They were creating something new. The new Haven's Rest would be both a living colony and a memorial. Families could settle here again, but they would live among monuments to those who had died. The central plaza would forever display the names of the 47,000. Schools would teach their stories. Parks would bear their names. Why rebuild here? A reporter asked Hunwoo. Why not choose a new location without such painful memories? Hunwoo looked at the construction, at the new buildings rising among the ruins. Because forgetting is easy. Remembering is hard. We rebuild here so that every human who lives on this world will know what happened. We rebuild here so that the names of the dead become part of the living community again. We rebuild here because giving up this world would be letting the Vraken win. The first new settlers arrived 6 months after the war ended. They were volunteers, people who understood they were coming to a place of both hope and sorrow. Among them was Captain Daeho's sister, Mingi. She had not been on Haven's Rest during the attack, but she felt called to return. She stood in the central plaza, looking at her brother's name carved in stone. Beside it were the names of his wife and their 2 children, her nephew and niece, all gone in the same 20 minutes of horror. "I am back, brother," she whispered. I brought seeds from Earth. I am going to plant them in the same fields you tended. I am going to rebuild what they tried to destroy. I am going to make sure this place lives again. Round her, other settlers made similar promises. Haven's Rest would rise again, not as it was, but as something stronger. A place where memory and hope lived side by side. In orbit, warships patrolled constantly. Earth had learned its lesson. Never again would a human colony be left defenseless. Back at the Galactic Council, Ambassador Yuna prepared to give her final report on the war and its aftermath. She had been offered a promotion, a chance to return to Earth for a position in the government. But she had declined. Her place was here, representing humanity to the galaxy. The war with the Vraken Empire is over, she told the assembled species, but its lessons remain. Humanity came to the stars hoping to join a community of peaceful beings. We still hope for that. But we also know now that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of justice, backed by the will to enforce it. She paused, letting her words sink in. Earth remains committed to the galactic community. We will trade, we will share knowledge, we will work together on common goals. But we will also defend ourselves and our allies without hesitation. We will never again wait for committees while our people die. Zurith, the Vraken civilian leader, stood to speak. He looked older now, worn down by the responsibility of leading his people through their darkest hour. On behalf of the Vraken people, I want to say that we are learning from this tragedy. Our children now learn about Haven's Rest in school. They see the memorials every day. They understand what their empire did and why it was wrong. We cannot undo the past, but we are trying to build a different future. Yuna nodded slowly. That is all any of us can do, Counselor Zurith. Learn from our mistakes and try to be better. The session ended, and representatives from various species approached Yuna. Some wanted to discuss trade agreements. Others wanted to explore mutual defense pacts. All of them treated Earth with a new level of respect. That night, Yuna returned to her quarters and looked at a photo she kept on her desk. It showed Haven's Rest before the attack. Happy people working in fields, children playing in parks, a community thriving under alien stars. She touched the glass gently. We did it, she whispered to the 47,000 ghosts. We made them pay. We changed the rules. We made sure it will not happen again. I hope that is enough. I hope you can rest now. Years later, historians would analyze the Haven's Rest War and its impact on galactic society. They would note how one tragedy changed the balance of power, how humanity's response reshaped diplomatic norms, how the willingness to use overwhelming force paradoxically made the galaxy more peaceful. But for the people who lived through it, the lesson was simpler. Humanity had tried being civilized. They had followed the rules, trusted the systems, and believed in diplomatic solutions. And when that failed, when their innocent were murdered, they showed the galaxy who they really were, not mindless warmongers, not bloodthirsty conquerors, but a species that protected its own with fierce determination, a species that would exhaust every peaceful option but would not hesitate to fight when fighting became necessary, a species that understood the terrible cost of war but accepted that cost when the decisive alternative was allowing genocide to go unpunished. The Vraken had wanted to test humanity's resolve. They got their answer, and the galaxy would never forget it. On Haven's Rest, the rebuilt colony thrived under its orbital defenses. In the central plaza, 47,000 names stood eternal watch over the living. And every human child who grew up there learned the same lesson their parents had learned. We tried peace first. But when peace failed, we stopped being civilized, and we made sure everyone remembered why. The galaxy was different now. Safer for the weak, more dangerous for predators, and humanity stood as proof that the most peaceful species could also be the most dangerous when their patience finally ended. It was not the future anyone had wanted, but it was the future Haven's Rest had bought with 47,000 lives. And humanity would make absolutely certain those lives were not wasted.